Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. When my husband and I first started dating, it felt like everything finally clicked. I'd been through my share of relationships that just never seemed to go anywhere. He was different, older, more confident, and incredibly charming. He knew how to make me laugh, how to make me feel seen. From the start, it felt natural. He seemed like he knew exactly what he wanted. And for the first time, I felt like I had someone who really wanted me. I knew about his past, of course. It wasn't exactly a secret. He'd been married before, and people whispered about why it ended. Late nights out, arguments, a suspicious relationship with a coworker that eventually turned into an affair. It was messy, but when we got together, he told me he'd changed. He said he regretted the mistakes he made in his first marriage, and that meeting me had been a wake-up call. He said I was different, that I made him want to be a better person. And honestly, I believed him. I had no reason not to. Our relationship was great in the beginning. He was thoughtful and attentive. He would surprise me with little things. A note tucked into my lunch, flowers after a tough week at work. He always seemed to be trying, to be making an effort. When we got married, it felt like a fresh start for both of us. We moved into a beautiful home, had our little traditions, and I felt loved and secure for the first time in my life. For years, I never doubted him. He gave me no reason to. He always came home on time. He seemed genuinely happy, and we never had any major fights. If there were problems, we talked through them. I thought he changed because he finally met the right woman. I never even thought about his past anymore. I figured that chapter of his life was closed. His father, though, was another story. My father-in-law wasn't the warm, fuzzy type. He was quiet, measured, and never said anything he didn't mean. He'd been a self-made man who built his own success, and you could tell he had high expectations, especially for his son. My husband told me his dad had always been a bit of a distant man you didn't want to disappoint. But when I met him, he was very warm and welcoming. Over time, I noticed he treated me with a kind of gentleness that stood out. He mentioned his late wife very often. My husband's mother passed away when he was still a kid. My father-in-law would talk about her occasionally, mostly in passing, but there was always a deep sadness when her name came up. He never remarried. It was clear she had been the love of his life. She was described as calm, patient, and kind-hearted. Over time, he began to mention how much I reminded him of her. At first, it felt a little strange. I wasn't sure how to respond when he'd say things like, "You have her eyes." But as the years went on, I understood that it wasn't just about appearances. I think I reminded him of the qualities she had, the ones he missed so much. It wasn't something he said all the time, but it was enough that I started to understand why he was so protective of me. He was also careful with his words when it came to his son. He never outright criticized him, but I could tell he didn't trust him the way I did. He'd say things like, "He's lucky to have you. Don't let him forget that." I used to think he was just being kind, but looking back, I realized he was trying to tell me something. I didn't want to hear it. I thought we had something strong, and for years, it seemed like we did. So when my husband came home one night and told me he needed space, I was completely blindsided. I asked if something had happened, if I'd done something wrong. He just said he wasn't happy and that he needed to figure himself out. I asked if there was someone else, and he denied it. I tried to understand, but it didn't make sense. He wouldn't give me any real answer. Then, a few weeks later, he asked for a divorce. I didn't fight it. At that point, I just felt drained from crying at night. If he didn't want to be here, what could I do? I signed the papers and tried to move on. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. I told myself I'd be okay eventually, that I could start fresh. But deep down, I wasn't sure how. Not long after, I started hearing things. Friends mentioned seeing him out with his secretary, and not just once or twice. Then someone let it slip that they'd been seeing each other before we were even divorced. Finally, I heard they were engaged. And the kicker? They were celebrating at the resort we used to visit every year, our special place. It felt like a slap in the face. That resort had been ours. It was where we celebrated anniversaries, toasted big milestones, made memories that I thought would last forever. And now, he was there with her. It wasn't just hurtful, it was disrespectful. I didn't know what to do with all that anger and sadness, so I went to see my father-in-law. We hadn't spoken since the divorce, but he welcomed me in. When I told him everything, he just nodded, like he'd been expecting it. He said, "I knew it. I hoped he'd changed, but I knew he wouldn't." I cried, and he let me. He didn't try to comfort me with empty words. He just listened. After I calmed down, he showed me something I never knew existed: his will. He explained that years ago, knowing his son's history, he'd put a clause in it. If my husband cheated on me, he'd lose everything. The inheritance, the family business, the properties, it would all go to me. I was shocked. He said he'd done it because he wanted me to have something if things went wrong, but he never wanted to tell me before. "I didn't want it to influence your decisions," he said, "but I wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of if he hurt you." I didn't know how to process that information. I wasn't after his father's money, but it gave me a strange sense of justice. My husband's actions had consequences, and for the first time, it felt like there was some accountability. When I found out about their engagement party at our resort, I decided to go. I booked a flight and showed up unannounced. I didn't make a scene. I walked into the terrace where they'd been laughing, holding champagne glasses, looking completely carefree. When they saw me, their smiles faded. His fiancée, his secretary, looked confused, and my ex-husband just froze. "Congratulations," I said, placing the envelope on the table. "This is a gift on your engagement from your father." He opened it and started reading. As his eyes scanned the page, he became angry. "This isn't real," he said, his voice rising. "He can't do this. He can't just leave everything to her." His fiancée looked worried, asking him what was going on, but he just shook his head and said it was nonsense. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "You'll need to talk to him about it," and then I walked away. When I told my sister what I'd done, she wasn't impressed. She said I stooped to his level, that I should have just walked away and left it alone. I don't know. I didn't cause the affair. I didn't cause the divorce. But by showing up, I definitely stirred the pot. I just don't know if I was wrong to do it. Am I the a-hole for ruining my ex-husband's engagement? Well, I think I'm going to have an unpopular opinion, but here we go. I can see why OP was hurt, but honestly, this feels like a low blow. OP had every right to feel angry and betrayed, but showing up unannounced at his engagement party to drop that on him, that's not about accountability. That's about making a scene. Even if OP didn't yell or cause a huge disruption, it was still a deliberate move to humiliate him in front of his fiancée. I'm not saying he didn't deserve consequences for what he did, but this wasn't the way to handle it. I think OP should have walked away with her dignity intact, instead of stooping to a move that seems more about revenge than anything else. So, yeah, I say it was a low move. He would have found out himself about the inheritance without OP embarrassing herself, and karma would have reached him itself. And what's your opinion, guys? And now let's hear what the community has to say on the matter. Not the a-hole. Look, he made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. You didn't make him cheat. You didn't make him file for divorce, and you didn't make him bring his fiancée to a place that held deep personal meaning for you. All you did was hand him an envelope containing the direct consequences of his own choices. If his fiancée and anyone else are upset about it, they should be looking at his actions, not yours. What you did wasn't vindictive. It was honest. The truth just happens to hurt sometimes. Honestly, I think what you did was a strong move. He blindsided you with a divorce after 20 years, gave you no real explanation, and moved on to someone else before the ink was even dry. You weren't the one sneaking around or disrespecting the marriage. You simply showed him that actions have consequences. The fact that he brought her to a resort that was special to you only makes his behavior more callous. And the way you handled it, you showed up, handed him the envelope, and left without causing a scene. I don't see how that makes you the a-hole. You handled the situation with way more grace than most people would. All you did was deliver a message from his father, one that he had earned by betraying your trust and your marriage. You didn't yell, you didn't scream, you didn't throw anything in his face. You simply handed him the truth in the form of that document and walked away. If your sister thinks that's stooping to his level, I'd have to disagree. You weren't petty or vengeful. You just reminded him that he couldn't run away from the consequences of his actions. Not the a-hole. Little background. We both, along with her husband Jeff, had the same after-school job in high school, and we became pretty close. They started dating in high school. I stayed in the city for college, and she went to the state school, but came home almost every other weekend. To explain everything, this is awkward. Her family is pretty solidly middle class. Jeff's mom struggled a lot, and I come from a very well-off family. This has never caused any resentment until recently. Jeff, who moved to Maddie's college town, did not go to college, but always talks about taking classes. He never does. They both work at a fast food place that is actually a great place to work at, with benefits and everything. Maddie is a manager. I got a very good job right after college. I also got engaged to my fiancé, Mark, right after college, and as a gift, my dad bought us the house. Now, to say that this is my dream house would be an understatement. It's old, beautiful, and in the perfect urban area. I used to pass it on my way to school, and ever since I was a little kid, I would tell people I was going to live there one day. When my dad told me he bought it for me, I almost fainted. Not only is it the house of my dreams, but it is also far too generous of a gift. Since moving in, we've done a ton of renovations. It wasn't well taken care of, to say the least, but still is amazing. Since it's in this neighborhood, it's historically protected and took a lot of work getting the right contractors to meet the city standards. We put our lives into this house. We even had a pool put in and redid the entire carriage house in an amazing guest house. We've obviously had a long engagement, and one of the reasons for this is that, for my job, I'm about 70% travel, all international. Mark is a journalist and also works a ton. Jeff and Maddie got engaged about 2.5 years ago and got married a few months later. She came to me, complaining that they couldn't afford to move out of her parents' basement, but they were driving her and her new husband crazy. She has 4 other sisters, ages ranging 12 to 22. I talked to Mark and we decided that they could live in our carriage house rent-free, but we needed help with upkeep. We laid out a cleaning schedule and they happily agreed and divided up what we asked them to do. For over a year, everything was great. Mark and I were able to travel and work knowing that our beloved home was taken care of, and they were able to live semi-autonomously. Then she got pregnant. Mark was off work for a few weeks and was traveling with me for work when I got a call from my dad. He said that he stopped by the house and the yard looked as if it hadn't been taken care of in weeks. The city actually sent a letter. I freaked out and called Jeff, who always did the yard work, and he said that he'd been really busy and would take care of it ASAP. He apparently took 3 more days to do anything. We got back from our trip and I thought I was going to cry. A few of our houseplants were dead. It looked as if they'd been using the main kitchen and not cleaning, and nothing had been dusted or kept up. The pool was a complete disaster. Pools, especially in the city, can get so gross if they aren't cleaned regularly. I went to my room and noticed that somebody apparently had been staying in the guest room. Bed unmade, etc. Sorry, I originally made it seem like my room was the one slept in. When they got home from work, I confronted them kindly. I know they both work a ton. Maddie was all smiles and said they had amazing news. They were finally pregnant. Finally? She had never said they were even trying. Also, they both know that Mark and I absolutely hate kids and don't want them. I asked them how they expected to pull this off and where were they going to live. They looked confused and said they would convert the office in the carriage house to a nursery, of course. I was pretty shell-shocked, and Mark knew, and said we needed to go to bed and sleep on it. They got extremely upset, but I said we'd just got off a 12-hour flight and were tired. The next day, I asked them to sit down with us, and we explained that we thought it would be a good idea for them to look into other housing options for when the baby comes. We offered to help them look and even loaned them money for deposits, etc. But we don't want to live with a kid. Maddie immediately pointed out that we weren't often home, and they lived in the carriage house. Apparently, they had been staying in the main house while we were gone, by the way, but didn't say why. We said that was true, but we did not want to live with a child, but we supported them having a baby and would help out however we could. Jeff said the best way was to continue letting them live in their house, especially because our house is in such a good school district. I got upset again. School is a long way away. How long were they planning on staying? It kinda developed, and Mark and I flat out said that they needed to be out by the wedding, in December, which is 2 or 3 months before she's due. Our friendship has completely broken down. Maddie is all over Facebook. Apparently, she blocked me, saying that I'm spoiled and stuck up, and Mark is enabling me, and that I look down on everyone. She bought a pool guard for the pool, and I told her to return it, but she refused, and now it's too late. She's telling everybody how she's going to decorate and paint the nursery. I was in Dubai for work when Mark called and said they'd bought paint, a garish pink. I texted her that if she painted anything, they'd be homeless. She did it anyway. I had a lawyer write an eviction notice, and they've ignored it. Renters in my city have a ton of rights, and the lawyer is looking into how soon they can be forced out by the police now. The painting and eviction notice happened this week. She's turning friends against me, and her parents called me saying that I'm an awful friend for not being more excited. I feel as if I'm taking crazy pills. I'm hoping the lawyer will take care of getting them out, but I'm more looking for advice on what to do about our mutual friends, and if there is any hope at continuing our friendship. You need to follow the lawyer's advice and get them out as soon as legally possible. You may also need to talk to her about defamation if she tries to drag you into the mud. Don't talk to her unless absolutely necessary. Growing up, my stepsister and I were never close. If I'm being completely honest, I resented her because she got to live with my dad full-time, and I felt like she was a replacement of me. I did some extremely childish things to her when we were teens, including spreading rumors that were not true at all. I even blew off her wedding. My dad had a heart attack and ended up having bypass surgery at the end of 2019. The whole ordeal was extremely scary for everyone, but it brought my stepsister and me closer. We actually realized we had a lot in common now, and we became very close, very quickly. At first, her husband and I got along. He even invited me to stay with them for a few weeks in April. That's when I realized there was something shady about him, and that he treated my stepsister like she was his property. I brought this up to her, and at first, she was in denial, but by the end of my visit, she started standing up for herself. I still remember the look on his face when she said no to him. It was like he had never heard that word before. After I left, she slowly stopped responding to me. I was worried, so I mentioned it to my dad and stepmom. My stepmom has always been very nice to me, but she was definitely angry at me over this. I found out from them that after I left, my stepsister's husband asked her if she wanted a divorce. That he told her that I was jealous and manipulating her to ruin their marriage, and that she had fallen for it like a fool. My stepmom said she called her in hysterics when her husband gave her a choice to either divorce him or cut me off. I tried to explain what happened and what I saw, but my dad kept telling me marriage was a compromise, and that if it worked for them, I shouldn't have tried to get involved. He said my stepsister has been happy with her husband for years, that her husband has always been loving and respectful towards her, and that I didn't know their full story, so I shouldn't have injected my opinion on what a relationship should look like unto them. I'm extremely frustrated because he really was treating her like property. He would click his fingers and expect her to run to him. He had someone with us constantly, and she was a completely different person when he was there. I don't know what to do to help her because she isn't talking to me. What should I be doing to make sure she is okay? How can I show her support in case she needs it again? This is a tough one. You've made it known to your stepsister, your dad, to your stepmom, what you think and how you feel what you observed in this relationship. Now, there are likely various reasons why they see things differently than you do, but the question you've asked is, what do I do now? From my perspective, there's nothing you can do. Your stepsister is a grown adult and gets to choose the type of relationship she wants to be in. But make no mistake, your words had an impact, and who knows what you set in motion. For now, though, you can only respect her choice and be available if she needs your support. I've been anxious and can't stop thinking about this since I discovered it. First, I would like to give you guys some background so you can better understand the family situation. My parents split when I was 6. My half-sisters were born when I was 10 and 15 years old. My mom got primary custody of me, so I lived with my mom and stepdad the entire time, and only visited my dad during weekends and holidays. My dad and stepmom, let's call her Sally, are always nice to me. In fact, I always felt like they were too nice. In a way, I never felt like I was truly accepted in the family. I see this contrast, especially since they both have bad tempers and are yellers towards each other and my sister. This is mostly due to the way Sally gets on with me, and less with my dad. My dad is quite introverted, as I am, and he mostly keeps to himself. Sally has always been the chatty and involved one. Sally has never ever gotten mad at something I've done before. I was always well behaved at their home, but over the past 13 or so years, there hasn't been one time she displayed any displeasure with the way I talked, spoke, behaved with her or my sisters. To my face, she would always support my side if her daughters misbehaved. She always treats me like a guest in their home. My mother was towards me growing up, and I always felt like Sally cared for my experience and sympathized with me because she would chat with me and listen to me. I'm starting to realize now that she may just be in it for the juicy gossip. I never had any ill intent towards her, and I always tried my best to support that side of my family and to show them I care in the best way I can. I would babysit for them on the weekends whenever they asked me to, on top of working in school. I love my sisters. I look after them. I take them out to do activities with them. I got Sally an electronic massager for Mother's Day because I know she has a tiresome job and it takes a toll on her body. Last week was her birthday, and I knitted her a scarf and bought her a cake. I'm just trying to illustrate how I genuinely am trying to show them that they matter a lot to me. Now, the situation at hand. My youngest sister asked me to help pick her outfit when I was taking them out. She shares a closet with her mom, and in the clear plastic drawer that held Sally's belongings, I saw a photo taken about 5 years ago, placed facing out in plain view. In that photo was the three of us girls, and I was holding my baby sister. However, my face was entirely cut out, and aside from the missing chunk in the photo, only my hands holding up my sister remains any trace of me in it. I asked both of my sisters if they may have done this, and they said they didn't. I know them both well enough to believe they were being truthful. Youngest sister admitted that it was probably their mom. I have no idea when she decided to cut my face out, as I have no clue when I have ever made her hate me like that. I know it seems like such a little thing, and it is. That's the disturbing part for me. The fact that for such a small thing, such as having a picture of her kids hanging around, she felt the need to remove me from it, so she doesn't have to even look at my face, rather than just ignore it in the photo. I'm quite scared to ever bring this up to her because I've never said a bad thing about her before. Never to her kids, never to my dad. I've only discussed my concern regarding her parenting style with my sisters in private with my boyfriend. Those aren't things I would ever say to her because it isn't my place to. She also has great difficulty being self-aware regarding her own behavior. For example, when Sally fights with my sister, Sally will blame everything on my sister and her inappropriate anger management and attitude, but is unable to see how her own way of yelling, hitting, and reasoning has contributed to my sister not having a good sense of anger management. She instead would call my sister a brat, crazy, sick in the head, forcing my sister to see the interaction as entirely her fault for it ending up that way. Now I am noticing all sorts of details looking into the past, and I am reconsidering her real intentions behind them. I speculate one thing that might be bothering her about me. In a conversation when I was around 18, that's when my dad didn't have to pay my mom child support anymore, I discussed how I felt like it was despicable of my mom to blow all the money my dad had to give her to support me on gambling and whatever she wanted. She never used that for me because she married a man for her meal ticket. I always felt bad about that because I see how hard my dad and Sally work for their money, and they were forced to give a portion of that to my mom because of me. I knew I never needed that money because my stepdad took care of us financially just fine. I was only venting about my mom's actions. However, in the years since legal child support payments ended, they have consistently given me money almost on a monthly basis. Since the very beginning, I've told them that was not necessary at all, and I was reluctant to accept it. I've been working since I was 15. I always take care of myself, and I don't like to rely on others for things that I want for myself. But in a Chinese family, they are very much about saving face, and they are quite forceful when they want others to take their money. They insist that I am still a child of theirs, and they must take care of me. They say the money I earn should go more towards my savings so I can have a better future. I have always been obedient, and when Sally would hand me the money, I would always say no, she didn't have to. But she would insist, and I wouldn't fight her on it because I just didn't want conflict. Now I am starting to realize she may resent me for them having to do that. However, it was nothing I ever requested of them. I've said I can take care of myself. They're the ones that feel like they have to. Yet she might be secretly holding a grudge against me for it. I know they fight about money a lot. My sisters are way more money conscious than average. I feel like her motivation for playing nice to me and paying me is so I will always feel indebted to her kindness and will take care of my sisters as they get older. I feel very misunderstood now because I would do that for my sisters no matter what. I know I'm 21 and adult, and I don't even live with them. However, I want to maintain a relationship with my sisters and my dad. I would like to figure out what it is about me that angers her, and I would like it to stop, because it isn't anything I'm intentionally doing. I would like to properly clear the air about it. Any insight or perspective is appreciated. Let me know if you have any experience approaching difficult issues with very traditional parents who value saving face a lot and are easily insulted when younger generation raises issues with them. I think you are projecting a lot and making a lot of assumptions about Sally's feelings towards you. You've said that Sally has 1. Been kind to you and not yelled at you like her own daughters, maybe because of your experience with your mother. Maybe she feels sad for you. 2. Listened to you when you needed to talk. 3. Insisted that you are a child of theirs and they want to contribute towards your financial stability. Is there any other evidence that Sally resents you besides this photo? It's hard to see this as concrete evidence of a lifetime of active resentment, but there may be more you're not telling. There are a lot of explanations for a cut-up photo. Maybe Sally has a scrapbook. It sounds like you had a troubled upbringing, and I hope you seek some counseling if you're able. They might help you sort through your feelings here.